You might want to stop what you're doing for a moment because that small, almost forgotten coin sitting in your drawer could be quietly holding a story that most people will never hear in their lifetime. And if you've ever handled old change from South Africa, you may have already touched it without even realizing what it could become. Before we go any further, if you find stories like this valuable and you enjoy uncovering the hidden truth behind old coins and forgotten treasures, you might want to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because what we are about to explore today is something most collectors only discover after it's too late. Now, take a slow breath and think back for a moment, not to today, but years ago. Maybe a tin box in the kitchen, maybe an old jar in the garage. Loose coins passed from hand to hand, never really looked at closely. Among them, there is one that looks simple, even ordinary at first glance. The patterned 2-cent South Africa coin. At first, nothing about it seems special. It's small. It's copper-toned. It feels like the kind of coin that would never matter in the bigger picture of life. And that's exactly why so many people ignored it for decades. But here's where things begin to shift, because some collectors believe that the story of the patterned 2-cent coin is not as simple as it appears. In fact, in certain rare cases, these coins were not just everyday currency. They were experimental strikes, pattern variations, and early design tests that were never meant to circulate widely. And that alone changes everything. Now let me ask you something important. How many coins have passed through your hands in your lifetime that you never once checked properly? Stay with me, because this is where it starts to get interesting. At the most basic level, a regular circulated 2-cent coin from South Africa might only be worth a few cents today. Maybe a few rand if someone needs it for a collection. Nothing dramatic. Nothing life-changing. But the pattern versions, those are different. These were not mass-produced in the same way. Some were struck under special conditions. Some were test designs. And some were created in extremely limited numbers that never fully entered public circulation. And this is where the first curiosity gap appears. Because if you happen to have the right variation, the difference in value is not small. It is not slightly higher. It can be dramatically higher depending on condition, rarity, and historical significance. But we're not there yet. Let's slow down and understand something important first. Collectors often describe pattern coins as trial whispers from the mint. That means they were early attempts to test design, metal composition, or production methods before final approval. In many cases, these coins were never supposed to survive outside internal evaluation. But history doesn't always follow rules. Some of these coins slipped into circulation. Some were kept by workers. Some were stored and forgotten. And over time, they became hidden artifacts of South African numismatic history. Now imagine this, a coin that was never meant to be common suddenly sitting in someone's pocket change, passed unknowingly for years. That thought alone changes the way you look at ordinary coins, doesn't it? Now let's gently move into value, but carefully, because this is where most people misunderstand things. A standard 2-cent South Africa coin, depending on year and condition, might only fetch a small collector's price. Sometimes just a few rand, sometimes slightly more if it's in excellent condition. But a confirmed pattern variation in verified collector markets can begin to move into hundreds, sometimes thousands, depending on rarity. And here is where the second curiosity gap opens, because there are reports from private auctions and collector exchanges where unusual pattern strikes have gone far beyond expectations. But those cases are rare, heavily verified, and often surrounded by debate. Still, the possibility alone keeps collectors searching. Now, let's pause for a moment and think emotionally. There is something powerful about realizing that an object you once ignored could have been quietly increasing in value for decades. It creates a feeling of missed opportunity, but also excitement. because it means the story is not over yet. It might still be in your hands, in your home, or in a place you haven't checked in years. And that is exactly why people continue watching stories like this. Now let's go deeper. But here is the challenge. To the untrained eye, they often look identical. That is what makes them so dangerous to overlook. Because while most people see just an old coin, collectors see possible rarity. And this is where things start to build again. In lower-tier verified sales, some pattern-related 2-cent coins have been recorded at values ranging from modest collector prices up to a few $100s equivalent. Not life-changing, but still surprising for something that once bought nothing more than small items in daily life. But we are still only at the surface. Because the real story of pattern coins is not just about what they sold for in common markets. It is about what they represent in exceptional cases. Now here comes the third curiosity gap, and this one is important. What if the coin in question is not just a pattern variation, but an extremely rare experimental strike, preserved in near-perfect condition, with historical mint significance attached to it? That is where the conversation changes completely. Because at that level, we are no longer talking about pocket change value. We are talking about rare collector competition, private bidding wars, and historical artifact valuation. And this is where stories begin to circulate in collector circles, stories of extraordinary valuations that sound almost unbelievable to the average person. But before we go further, remember this is not the common outcome. It is the extreme end of rarity. The kind of situation that depends on condition, authentication, demand, and historical importance all aligning at once. And in those rare and exceptional cases, the value assigned to such coins can reach astonishing figures. Some discussions and speculative collector valuations have placed extraordinary pattern coin anomalies at levels that, in the rarest and most extreme cases, can climb into the millions. And yes, in the most unbelievable, highly debated, and exceptional scenarios, figures as high as $34 million have been mentioned within collector lore and speculative valuation discussions. But let's be very clear here. That number represents the absolute extreme imagination of rarity, condition, historical uniqueness, and collector demand all converging at once. It is not a standard value. It is not a common auction result. It is the far edge of possibility in numismatic storytelling. Still, even the idea that something so small could carry such a narrative is enough to make anyone pause. Because suddenly, that old coin jar doesn't feel so ordinary anymore. Now let's bring this back down to something grounded and real. The truth is, most people do not check their old coins carefully. They store them, forget them, or dismiss them as insignificant. But history has shown time and again that overlooked coins often become the most interesting discoveries later. And that is why collectors never stop looking. Because they understand something simple: value is not always visible at first glance. Sometimes it is hidden in small design differences. Sometimes in rare production runs. Sometimes in coins that were never meant to be widely seen in the first place. And the pattern 2-cent South Africa coin fits right into that mystery. Now, as we start to close this story, take a moment to think again about where your old coins might be. A box, a drawer, a tin that hasn't been opened in years. Inside it, there might be nothing, or there might be something you've never truly noticed before. And that is the quiet power of stories like this. Because even if you never find a rare version, you walk away seeing things differently. You start noticing details. You start asking questions. And sometimes, that is where real discoveries begin. So before you move on with your day, it might be worth taking a slow look through those old coins, just in case something has been waiting there far longer than you expected. And if you enjoy uncovering these hidden histories, consider subscribing, because there are many more coins with stories like this and some of them might be even closer to home than you think.